No disrespect to Mike Tyson, one of the strongest punchers of the modern era, who could knock out any boxer with either fist, with either style of hitting. It was the great Joe Louis that would destroy an opponent. He had a killer instinct that cannot be underestimated. Now, you look at the old tapes of Louis knockouts, they were devastating because short rights and short lefts, he was such a compact fighter. And like Bruce Lee said once, the 2-inch punch. In this case, it was no more than 3 or 4 inches. So today on Inside the Ropes, we're going to be looking at the second Max Schmeling-Louis fight, where Max Schmeling was almost murdered in the ring by a guy that had something to prove. Obviously, there was a lot of sentiment in Nazi Germany towards Schmeling, white superiority or black superiority. Schmeling had knocked out Louis in the initial fight when Louis was coming up as an established fighter. The rematch occurred, and it was one of the most anticipated rematches in boxing history. Joe Louis had won the title outright from Jim Braddock after Braddock had, the Cinderella Man, had beat Max Baer, who had beaten Primo Carnera. Now, the Louis-Schmeling rematch came on June 22nd, 1938, obviously the start of summer, 1 year from the day Louis had won the World Heavyweight title. They once met again in a sold-out Yankee Stadium in New York City. Now, according to published reports, 70,000 people were there, and allegedly more like 80,000. Those in attendance, including celebrities Clark Gable, Douglas Fairbanks Sr., Gary Cooper, Gregory Peck, and J. Edgar Hoover, head of the FBI. The fight drew a gate of 1.015 million, equivalent to 22 million in 2024. 70 million people listened on the radio in the U.S., and more than 500 million across the world. And this was a broadcast in different languages across Europe. Now, this is a preamble to the Second World War, so there was a lot of propaganda and publicity going on. Now, Schmeling seemed to be more of a light heavyweight in this match. He came out of his corner trying to utilize the same style that got him the victory in their first fight, with a straight standing posture and a left hand prepared to begin jabbing. If anything, Schmeling was a good defensive and offensive fighter at the same time. But of course, Louis was in there to prove something. Now, according to Ring Magazine, he had wanted to get the fight over early. Before the match, he mentioned to his trainer, the great Jack Chappie Blackburn, that he would devote all his energy to the first 3 rounds, and even told noted sports writer Jimmy Cannon that he predicted a knockout in the first round. After only a few seconds of fainting, Louis unleashed a tireless barrage on the overmatched Schmeling. Referee Art Donovan stopped the action for the first time just over 1 minute and a half in the fight after Louis connected on 5 left hooks and a body blow to Schmeling's lower left, which had him audibly crying in pain. Some people say it was a perforated kidney. Some people said it was what he called one of the most devastating body punches in boxing history. And left him, some people say his spine was compromised. After sending Louis briefly to his corner, Donovan quickly resumed action, after which Louis went on attack again, immediately felling the German with a right hook to the face. Schmeling went down this time, arising on account of a tree, and he could barely stand up. Now, Louis then resumed his barrage, this time focusing on Schmeling's head. After connecting on 3 clean shots of Schmeling's jaw, the German fell to the canvas again, arising at the count of 2. With Schmeling having few defenses left at this point, Louis connected at will, sending Schmeling to the canvas for the 3rd time in short order with a short uppercut, almost taking his head off. Now, Schmeling's quarterman, Max Machen, threw a towel in the ring, although under New York State rules, this did not end the fight. Machen was therefore forced to enter the ring at the count of 8, at which Donovan already declared the fight discontinued or over. Louis was the winner and world heavyweight champion yet again by a TKO, 2 minutes and 4 seconds into the first round. And as one writer said, 124 seconds of hell for Max Schmeling. In all, Louis had thrown 41 punches in the fight, 31 which landed solidly. Schmeling, by contrast, had been able to throw only 2 punches. Soundly defeated, Schmeling had admitted to Polyclinic Hospital for 10 days. During his stay, it was discovered that Louis had cracked several vertebrae in Schmeling's back. Literally, the punches broke his back. Now, Schmeling and his handlers complained after the bout that Louis' initial volley had included a illegal kidney punch, and even refused Louis' visitation at the hospital. The claim resounded hollowly in the media. However, he eventually chose not to file a formal complaint. Now, after the match, The fight had radical as well as political undertones. Much of Black America pins its hopes on the outcome of this Joe Louis fight, these other matches, seeing Louis's success as a vehicle for advancing the cause of African Americans everywhere. In his autobiography, Schmeling himself confirmed the public's reaction to the outcome, recounting his ambulance ride to the hospital afterward. As we drove through Harlem, there were noisy dancing crowds. Bands had left the nightclubs and bars and were playing and dancing on the sidewalks and streets. The whole area was filled with celebration, noise, and saxophones, continuously punctuated by the calling of Joe's name. Now, reaction to mainstream American press, while positive towards Louis, reflected the implicit racism in the States at the time. Louis Atchison of the Washington Post began his story. Joe Louis, the lethargic, chicken-eating young colored boy, reverted to his dreaded role as a brown bomber tonight. Henry McLemore of the United Press called Louis a jungle man, completely primitive as any savage out to destroy anything he hates. The day after the fight, blues musician Bill Gaither recorded one of his famous songs, Champ Joe Louis, a song praising the champ. He's defeated Schmeling. Now, although Schmeling rebounded professionally from a loss to Louis, winning the European crown by knocking out Adolf Heuser in the first round in 1939, the Nazi regime would cease promoting him as a national hero. Schmeling and Nazi authorities grew further in opposition over time. During the Kristallnacht of November 38, Schmeling provided sanctuary for two young Jewish boys to safeguard them for the Gestapo. Conversely, as a way of punishing Schmeling for his increasingly public resistance, Hitler drafted Schmeling into paratrooper duty in a German Luftwaffe. After brief military service and a comeback attempt in 47-48, he retired from pro boxing. He would go on to invest his earnings in various post-war businesses. His resistance to the Nazi Party elevated his status once again to that of a hero in post-war Germany. Max Schmeling was never a Nazi, ladies and gentlemen. If anything, was a human being. Now, Louis was treated very poorly after the fight because he eventually had to pay back a whole bunch of taxes on these matches, which almost bankrupted him. Now, according to print issues at the time, he's considered the first true African American national hero. When other prominent blacks questioned whether African Americans should serve against the Axis nation and segregated U.S. Army forces, Louis disagreed, saying there are a lot of things wrong with America, but Hitler ain't going to fix them. He would go on the star in the army during World War II, but he did not engage in battle while the war was going on. He mostly visited soldiers in Europe to provide them with motivational speeches and with boxing exhibitions. He kept defending the world title until 1949, making 25 consecutive title defenses, still a world record among all weight divisions for men's boxing. Of course, Regina Halmich, a woman boxer, made 21 defenses of her title, her world flyweight women's crown. Now, his finances, because of the tax burden, evaporated later in life. Now, Louis and Schmeling developed a friendship outside the ring, which endured until Louis's death in April 1981. The rivalry and friendship was the focus of the TV movie Ring of Passion in 1978. Louis got a job as a greeter at Caesars, and Schmeling flew to visit him every year. Louis was a dire need of money, but too damaged to box anymore, so the former champion took up pro wrestling to make ends meet. Schmeling reportedly also sent Louis money in Louis's later years and covered a part of his funeral, at which he was a pallbearer. Schmeling died 24 years later on February 2nd, 2005, at a young age of 99. As of 2003, he was ranked 55 in the ring's list of the 100 greatest punchers ever. Now, both Louis and Schmeling are members of the International Boxing Hall of Fame. So, ladies and gentlemen, Joe Louis had something to prove. I don't think it was against the Nazis, but basically, the white press still didn't accept him as champion, and I don't think he ever apologized. But Schmeling was a good fighter, but the problem is Joe Louis, ladies and gentlemen, the power in two hands. You watch these on YouTube, he's 10 or 15 key knockouts. It's the same thing. If you got you within that 4-inch range or 6-inch range, I mean, power from both hands, I mean, he could take your head off. And I like to see, Tony Galanto once said it was like being hit with a tire iron, and I think that agrees. Galanto was one of his big knockouts. I think he almost tore half his face off. So that's the story of the second Max Schmeling, Joe Louis fight. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, there's revisionists out there. I consider Joe Louis either number 3 or number 2, and sometimes number 1, greatest heavyweight of all time. The level of opposition, the amount of defenses, how he changed the game. And he fought with a style of a welterweight but with the power of a heavyweight. And that led to Sugar Ray Robinson, led to Ali, led to Mike Tyson because everything draws from him from the early 1930s onward, because the heavyweight championship was run by the Mafia with Schmeling and Sharkey, Primo Carnera. We've Hardy Day Fall. But ladies and gentlemen, Joe Louis in his prime would probably beat 99% of the modern heavyweights. He would give up 30 pounds, but he'd probably take their heads off. Because like a shark, he was like a shark. He was a shark in the ring, because a shark would smell blood, you were done. Because most of the knockouts weren't clean knockouts you like see now where they fall down. I mean, they're standing upright instead of normally falling like a knockdown. They're almost killed. And Marciano had the same style too with the short hands. Because Marciano might as well say he's a white Joe Louis because it's the same style. But Marciano didn't have the same opponents because Louis had knocked them all out even 5-10 years before. Louis retired a lot of people. So that's the story of Louis-Schmeling 2. If you like what we're doing with Inside the Ropes, let us know with a like, comment, subscribe, or share.